Welcome to NASCAR Live Before Lock, right here on Awesemo.com. I am Jason Floyd. Of course, we're here to get you ready for today's race that is 1 hour away, a road course race here at Daytona. But before we get into that, do gotta let you know, you need to head over to our Twitter account, which at Awesemo_com. We do have a flash giveaway going on where you can win a Also Plus weekly pass. All you gotta do is go over to our Twitter handle and you will see all the details of how you can win a Also Plus weekly pass. Chris, as always, great to be here on a Sunday afternoon talking with you. So first off, what's kind of your general thoughts about today's race?
So I'm looking forward to a good one. If you guys watched the Busch Clash, I think it was earlier February 9th, if I remember exactly, it was a pretty darn good race. And if we see anything like that, I think we're in for a treat today. It should be a good one.
Obviously, we got a ton of things we want to get into before we get into listener questions, but let's get right into it. Roster construction, kind of what's been your thought process of how you've been building your lineups?
So roster construction this week, the way the starting lineup was set from the Daytona 500 last week, I think our lineups are going to look pretty similar to how they looked last week. We're going to mainly focus on drivers starting in the back because a lot of good cars wrecked out early on, and we're starting deep in the pack today. Also, we only have 70 laps, which means dominator points are not going to be super important. We're looking at around 49 total dominator points. So guys that can get place differential points and high finishing position upside are definitely the guys to mainly focus in on, maybe outside of Chase Elliott today.
In terms of, we'll get into dominators in a second, but I saw this question earlier today in our premium Slack account, of course. That's a great way to ask questions to us to get here on the show. Of course, we also will take your questions in YouTube, but someone had said, single entry roster construction, do you start with Chase Elliott? Which I also think kind of leads into dominators because obviously he would be the guy that you would potentially be pointing towards if he can stay on the pole and maintain that lead.
I think you have two choices in single entries today. You're either going to start with Chase Elliott, hope he leads the majority of the race. I'm talking like 50, 70% of the race and win, because that's kind of his path to an optimal lineup. Because the other guys like Ryan Blaney, AJ Allmendinger, these guys are starting in nearly 30th place and can pick up nearly 20, 25 spots and have a very, very strong day without leading any laps, without winning the race. So if you want to get a bit risky, Chase Elliott's your guy. The guy's won 4 road course races in a row. I'd be very, very shocked if he does not win this race. But if anything happens to him at all, your lineup's pretty dead because he's taking up a decent chunk of your salary in your lineup. And if anything happens to Ryan Blaney, at least he has that decent floor built in. So the risky way is to play Chase Elliott, but the safer way is to go a route like Allmendinger, Truex, and Ryan Blaney.
Yeah, I know when I was doing a crunch right here before we started the show, Chase was coming up about 33% of my lineups. Obviously, there's some other drivers that were getting much more percentages. We'll talk about point differential there, in a moment. But, when you look at someone like Chase starting at on the pole, like let's say he finishes 5th. Can he be optimal?
I don't think he can unless he happened to lead like 60 laps and something happens to him in the very end and then he gets 5th place. It might work out, but something bad's going to have to happen to a guy like Blaney Allmendinger. Sorry to keep repeating myself, but it's right where he's in that price range. And those guys are just such fantastic plays. So it all comes down to how those guys do versus how Chase Elliott does. He's pretty much going to have to win the race or at least come in like 2nd and 3rd and lead a good chunk of this race.
Obviously, when you look at this race, I think the thing that sticks out to me, and a lot of it obviously is based on the conversation I had with Phil yesterday on the strategy show, is in terms of place differential, because you look at some of these, and some of these drivers you've already mentioned about. Ryan Blaney starting 27th, Allmendinger starting 34th. You kind of go down a little bit. Alex Bowman, I know we were talking about right before show, starting 36. Matty D starting 32nd. Amarola starting 26. Jones slated start 37, but he's now in the back of the field. Not really a huge difference because, well, he goes back 3 spots.
Yeah, right. He'll be fine. But yeah, all those guys you mentioned, I have like a laundry list of place differential plays here, and you didn't even mention some of the other guys like Tyler Reddick, Ryan Newman, Chris Buescher, even Ty Dillon, Daniel Suarez, James Davison. There is so many good place differential plays on this slate, and I think that's a good thing because if we just had like Bowman and Dinger in the back, it's obvious to go to those guys. But since there's so many of these guys, the ownership's going to be spread out a little bit. So I think this is going to be a really fun slate to try to get different, find guys that are maybe not starting all the way back, kind of mid-pack, just to differentiate your lineups a bit.
How do you think, what is the key to being different in terms of roster construction?
So I think a lot of people are going to go flocking right to the guys that we just mentioned, but there's some really good guys starting in the mid-pack, like William Byron. He's starting 22nd, Kurt Busch. And if you actually look right into the $8,000 price range, there is a ton of good tournament plays there. Like I said, Byron, Bush, Briscoe, Kyle Larson, MDB is not really a tournament play, but those guys kind of starting mid-pack, I think are going to go a bit overlooked, but they have some really decent upside here and can have top 10 potential.
How different is your thought process, or maybe it isn't different in terms of GPP and cash?
In cash games, I really don't think you should target any of those guys in the mid-pack for the most part. Yes, I like William Byron. I love Kurt Busch, but I'm not sure I'm going to go there in cash games. I would say William Byron's a fringe cash play, but those guys starting much further back are the better way to go for cash games, because why take the risk just to get that nice safe floor? Because as I always say in cash games, we're not looking to take down a cash game. We just want to get over half the field. In tournaments, guys like Denny Hamlin, Keselowski, Logano, they're going to be pretty iffy plays, but if they pay off, you'll definitely have leverage on the field if something happens to one of those place differential guys.
Appreciate everyone tuning in here on a Sunday afternoon. Be sure to smash that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. That does help this show out a ton. Of course, if you are not subscribed to Awesemo, you got to subscribe to the channel. We have live shows for you each and every day. Of course, come up here later today. It'll get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. And of course, make sure you hit that notification bell so when you know when a new show is live here on the channel. I want to mention, I'll just mention this question that we've already gotten over in Slack, just came in. And this was a guy that I was looking at as just a punt play. Daniel Suarez. And Bruce saying, is he even playable today?
He is definitely playable because the value options on the slate aren't that great, but there's a lot of really good high-end options. So if we want to play these high-end options like Blaney, Truex, Elliott, we have to dive into this range. And I know if you guys watch on my own channel, Daniel Suarez, I called him the lawnmower man because his car was really, really slow. He used to be in good equipment. Now he's in some pretty bad equipment, but he's changed cars this year. He's on the 99 car, which I think it's going to be a little bit better. But last year at the road course in the 96 car, he finished 27th, and if he got a 27th, 25th place finish, that is just fine. His price point at starting 35th.
Looking at some of those top end options that we mentioned about, we'll just kind of we'll go from 10,000 and above. So you've got Truex Jr. starting 19th, Chase Elliott, who we've already talked about on the poll, Blaney starting 27th, AJ Allmendinger starting 34th, and Kyle Busch starting 14th. I guess I'll start with Allmendinger because he was a guy that we were seeing a ton of ownership yesterday. Still has a good amount of ownership, but how much do you think of what happened yesterday in the race is going to affect people's thoughts?
So just looking at Twitter, I know Twitter might not be the best way to just try to source ownership, but it's definitely what happened yesterday, because he was running pretty well, but he got into an incident, killed his race. I'm thinking that's going to lower his ownership a bit, because I know the big question mark this week is that AJ Allmendinger does not have the best equipment. It's certainly not up to par with guys like Blaney, Elliott, Truex, Hamlin. That definitely not saying that. He has really good odds in Vegas to still potentially win this race. I don't think that's going to happen, but I still think he could compete for a top 10, top 15 finish. And that is perfectly fine starting all the way back in 34th, because equipment doesn't matter too much at a road course. It's more so driver skill, and AJ Allmendinger is like a road course specialist. So I know that might be a bit of a concern, and I personally did lower my ownership a little bit, but I still think he's a very solid play today.
Phil made an interesting point yesterday talking about Allmendinger, and he's like, look, he's not worrying about how many points is he going to get today. He's not worried about, the future of where is this going to lead to. Like, all he cares about is winning the race.
Exactly. I mean, what's better to have than a person that has nothing to lose?
That can be good and bad, though.
You're right. I was thinking that in my head as soon as I said it.
I mean, because you think about it, is he might take some risks that maybe, someone like, let's just say like an Alex Bowman, who, I mean, look, he's going to be racing every week. Yes. Where maybe that AJ is going to take some risks that other drivers just wouldn't. And that's like, it's a good and bad thought process.
Yeah, we could potentially see something like happen yesterday in the Xfinity race.
Yeah. In terms of the other top end options here, we all know you're the president of the Ryan Blaney fan club, but he's starting 27th. So that's a number that obviously you're going to love, whether you're the president of the Ryan Blaney fan club or you're the president of the Ryan Blaney I Hate club.
Yeah, I was telling you before the show, everyone's going to think I'm being biased once again. I know he wrecked last week, but Ryan Blaney is a very good road course racer. He won at a Roval race before. And if you guys watched the Busch class earlier in February, I know it's not an official race, but he was going to win that race, but his buddy Chase Elliott took him out in the very last lap. So I think Ryan Blaney's got some massive upside here. I would not be surprised if he contends for the win in this race. At the very least, maybe a top 5 finish, which would be amazing starting 27th.
Martin Truex Jr., the highest salary on DK at 11,000. He's 13.5 over in FanDuel. That's second highest. So what's kind of your thoughts on Martin Truex Jr. in this spot?
So before DraftKings released their pricing this week, my main plan was to play Chase Elliott and Martin Truex together, because these guys, no matter what, they're 1 or 2 in every single statistical category at road courses. These guys are absolutely phenomenal. Chase Elliott a little bit better than Truex, but these guys are absolutely fantastic. Now, I like the place differential we get with Martin Truex. It's just that price tag makes it really hard to play both of these guys. And since Truex starts a little bit further back, well, maybe not a little bit, a lot farther back, starting in 19th compared to first, I feel like I would lean Truex over Chase Elliott today, but I think Truex either finishes first or second today, in my opinion. If you guys watch the Busch Clash, he easily had the best car. He started in the very back, came all the way back up front, got in first, ended up having a penalty, I believe. It was on pit road. He gets back to the rear, then he drives his way all the way back up to the front once again, very quickly, and then he ends up wrecking and finishing, I think, dead last. So he easily had the best car, and he should have a very strong car today once again.
Now, when you look at some of the mid-range plays in terms of this, when you kind of look at that salary range, is there a name? I mean, I guess, if you want to consider him a mid-range play, I guess Alex Bowman probably is the guy that really just jumps off the screen at you.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you if we can include Bowman in the mid-range, but he's just such a good play. I mean, at the 4 Roval races we have, he has an average finish of 6.5. Like, if he had just hit his average finish, we could be looking close to 70 DraftKings points. They're not saying that's exactly what he's going to do, but for him to fail you today, he's going to have a mechanical issue, and we really can't bank on that. But he's got a good equipment. Hendrick tends to bring a lot of speed here at the Roval races, so I have high hopes for Bowman today.
Yeah, when you look at Bowman starting 36, it's like you just like to me, I look at him and just say in your cash lineup, he's got to be just like a staple, right?
Yeah, I personally think he could be the highest priced driver today, and that would be fair. I mean, he's just such a good play today.
Yeah, I mean, you look at him, he's 9,000 on FanDuel as well, so a price exactly the same. So he's one that sticks out to you as you kind of look a little bit lower than Alex Bowman. Who's kind of that next name that jumps off to you?
I hate to say it because I seem to like this guy every single week, like Ryan Blaney, but Eric Jones, I know he has a downgrading card this year, but like I was mentioning earlier, road courses are more so driver skill than equipment. Now, at intermediate tracks, Eric Jones is definitely not going to have the same success that he used to, but Jones is a pretty good road course driver. He's starting all the way back in 37. That's one spot further back than Alex Bowman. If he could contend for a top 15, top 20 finish, he's going to kill that price tag on DraftKings today.
Is there any plays in this mid range that you just look at and go, man, I just saw, I guess maybe if you want to look at, I don't know if we want to consider this necessarily a mid range, but Michael McDowell starting second at 6,800.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions on Michael McDowell. I typically like him at road courses. The guy's a very good road course driver, but starting second, I feel like there's like almost a near 0% chance he makes optimal today. He's going to have to hang inside the top 5, and I mean, I think very easily Ty Dillon, Daniel Suarez should outscore Michael McDowell today.
Yeah, I mean, I look at McDowell and say, if he doesn't get the lead in the first turn, what's the path?
Yeah, and do we really think he's going to hold off Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson? I just don't see that happening. I feel like he can finish in like the 12th to 15th range, but starting second, that's not good enough.
Yeah, no, I'm with you in terms of that. Now, as we look at some value plays, we kind of briefly touched on Daniel Suarez there a little bit, but is there some value plays that you like there?
I do like Suarez, but my favorite's Ty Dillon, 5,600. He's starting all the way back in 38th, so he really can't do any damage to you. I mean, the worst case scenario is he loses 2 spots and finishes 40th, but Ty Dillon's typically a guy that finishes around 20th to 25th place at road courses. Now, we did switch rides this year. He's in the Daniel Suarez lawnmower car, so it's definitely not the highest of hopes, but Suarez did finish 27th last year, and if Ty Dillon could finish right around 27th, I mean, that's a pretty good day starting 38th at his price point. One guy I also want to mention is James Davison at 39th. It's only $5,200. I know I don't typically like playing these scrub guys, but he's not a bad road course driver. Last year in 2 Roval races, he had an average running position of 30.9. That's about 9 spots gained, and that's not that bad at nearly just $5,000.
This is a FanDuel question because this driver's salary came up, and I don't know if you're already thinking of who I'm going to bring up. He's 4,500 on FanDuel, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
So in DraftKings, I think he's an okay play at 6,100 just because that 6K range is rough. At 4,500 on FanDuel, that is cheap. He is starting 16, so it makes him a bit risky. The thing is, though, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is typically a guy that can hang inside the top 20 here at road courses. The upside is limited, though, but I do think he's a nice pivot off of some of those other guys like a Dillon, a Suarez, just because I feel like his finishing position potential is much higher than those guys. It's just there's a little bit of downside there as well. And we know with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he doesn't have the nickname Ricky Stenhouse for nothing. So keep that in mind as well.
I've definitely heard that name host this show over the last year or so. In terms of risky plays, do I just broadly say risky play? Someone starting inside the top 10?
Yeah, besides Chase Elliott, I would say all those guys are risky. But one guy I'm looking at inside the top 10, Kyle Larson, $8,300. I feel like he's underpriced here. He's starting 8th. I know he has no Daytona road course experience and a cup car, but Hendrick Motorsports tends to bring a lot of speed. And if you guys don't know, Kyle Larson went from the 42 car, now he's in the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports. And I like all the Hendrick cars today. That's Chase Elliott. That's Alex Bowman, William Byron. Those are some of my favorite plays on the slate today. Kyle Larson should have plenty of speed. And I know he only has 2 Roval races, the past 4 races at the Rovals, which is really all we have, but he has some really strong numbers. One of the best average driver ratings, some of the most fast laps led. I think if something happens to Chase or Hamlin, Kyle Larson could be a sneaky dominator today at low ownership.
We're about to get into your listener questions, so start lining those up, whether it's in our premium Slack account, which does take precedent, or on YouTube. We'll get those questions. Of course, be sure to sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. Gives you access to our player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channels, and so much more. And if you're just looking for NASCAR coverage, you get a NASCAR weekly pass for $9.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Just go to awesemo.com/join. You see it right there on the screen, and sign up for the pass that you are looking for. You got to take advantage and especially add Fantasy Cruncher to your account. That is going to help you out a ton, especially when you're trying to make those multiple lineups. So we'll get to some questions that have already been asked over on our Slack account. Mike Peterson says, got a free entry with DK Crowns and firing a single bullet on Alfredo, Kyle Busch, Bowman, Ty Dillon, Eric Jones, Elliott. Thoughts? Any changes in the big GP?
So if you're doing a single bullet, you obviously got to get different. I think you did that with guys like Kyle Busch and Anthony Alfredo. Those other guys should have some decent ownership, but they are very good plays. But guys like Alfredo, that's a nice direct pivot off of guys like Soares and Dillon, because those guys are going to soak up most of the ownership down there. And I do like Kyle Busch, and I don't think we've mentioned him yet. For a guy that's that popular, Kyle Busch, it's kind of weird, but I think he's in a halfway decent spot here. Now, the problem is he's priced around those guys like Dinger, Blaney, Elliott, Truex, and all the ownership is going to those guys. But Kyle Busch, he won this race a couple of weeks ago here. Now, he got a bit lucky because of the Elliott and Ryan Blaney crash, but still, he had an overall solid race. So I think Kyle Busch could be pretty sneaky today.
How many guys starting 30 plus is too many?
Really, you can make the majority of your lineup down there. I mean, not off the top of my head, I'm trying to see what a lineup would work, but Bowman, MDB, Jones, Newman, Busher, Dillon. I mean, you could pretty much make a whole lineup starting 30th and back.
Okay, I have a lineup that has all drivers: Allmendinger, Bowman, Busher, Matty D, Jones, and Newman.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's
all
perfect.
30 plus. I mean,
yeah.
Like, look, I base my lineups off my conversations with Phil and you. That's how I base my lineups off of.
Yeah, I like that.
Daniel Suarez or Ty Dillon, DraftKings GPP single entry.
I like Ty Dillon just because he's starting 3 spots further back, and that's pretty much as simple as that.
Of course, I'll get to some questions here over in YouTube as well. So, of course, you can start lining those questions up as well. If you do have any questions for Chris that you want to have in terms of there. Derek says, Ryan Preece for the win.
Oh, gosh. Well, if you want to put money on that, you got some really good odds for that.
You mentioned about Chase, and we do try to mention about the betting odds here. Outside of Chase, like just in terms of to win the race, who is some other ones that people should be looking at if they're looking to place a wager on the races?
So last I looked, William Byron was at plus 2,200. He actually last year, he had the best average green flag speed at the road courses. And like I said, Hendrick typically brings pretty fast cars. Now, I think he's going to have to get lucky on some pit strategy or something like that, but that can certainly happen. So William Byron at those odds, I don't mind it as more of a long shot. But obviously the obvious picks to win are Chase Elliott, Martin Truex. Also, but Denny Hamlin, he's at over plus 1,000. For a guy that I think should be in the top 3 all day, I don't mind those odds.
In terms of some other ones, Ryan Newman is someone we really haven't talked about here. Obviously starting, towards the back. So what's your takes on Ryan Newman here, and kind of what do you believe the ceiling is for him in this race?
So looking at the 4 Roval races for Newman, he's got an average finish of 23.3, which is right on par with his average running position of 23.1. I feel like he's going to finish anywhere from that 20th to 25th place range, which is not bad for where he's starting. But I always say this with Ryan Newman, he's usually the most boring play in the world. The guy just isn't flashy. He doesn't typically suck or anything, but when I can get a guy like Chris Buescher starting 30th, who's been a top 20 machine at road courses, I can get Tyler Reddick, who's a much more exciting play for only $200 more. He's an okay play. I do have a decent chunk of Ryan Newman, but I'm not expecting fireworks from him. I'm just kind of like a safe floor play.
Chris asking about Christopher Bell.
Christopher Bell is interesting. I wish he was starting further back because I would like him because he's in a pretty good ride this year. He took over Eric Jones' 20 car, and Eric Jones had some pretty decent success in that 20 car at road courses. And we know Christopher Bell is a pretty good driver. The problem is starting 12th, the drivers that he's right around. So I'll list these guys off for you. Eric Almirola, Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Newman, Chris Buescher. We talked about those guys as being such amazing play. We can't play everyone in the 7K range. So Christopher Bell is more than likely going to be that forgotten guy, but he does have top 10 upside here. It's just the other guys have such more to offer you with the place differential.
My guy EMAC checking in going, hey, Jason, any drivers going to sit out today with back spasms? Now, there may be people who don't know what this is about. This is about last night's UFC card. Literally, Chas Skelly walks to the cage. He's waiting for his opponent. Opponent gets back spasms walking to the cage. Fight doesn't happen, and there's no late swap. So pretty much you want to talk about a guy that I had 55% ownership in Jamal Emmers. You want to talk about, will you just go, you know what? I'm done with this slate for tonight. See you later. I'm done.
It's like Steph Curry getting run up after lock yesterday.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. It was like, oh, man, when you see that happen, you're just like.
Feel bad for those people, man.
Oh, yeah. That's the one thing. Come on, DraftKings, FanDuel. Can we get a late swap on MMA when this stuff happens? Because it was like the third or fourth fight of the night. Like, there have been plenty of other fights you could have swapped to. But, oh, man, yeah. Yeah. Tyler says Kyle Larson or Eric Jones for a GPP.
I know Larson's going to have much lower ownership, but the smart choice there is Eric Jones.
Yeah. Kyle Busch or Denny Hamlin? Denny's the guy we really haven't talked about today.
Yeah, I think if Chase Elliott doesn't lead the race early, I think that's because Denny Hamlin. I think it's a little bit unlikely, but I think at the beginning of the race, we're going to see Hamlin and Chase 1-2. But if I had to pick between him or Kyle Busch and salary didn't matter, I would pick with Busch just because he's starting in 14th, Hamlin's in 4th, and I feel like Kyle Busch can be a top 5 contender. Same with Hamlin, so why not take the guy starting further back?
We mentioned a lot about Chase Elliott, but someone said, is he worth the price? I mean, you mentioned about the history. I mean, all that it has to be, unless obviously he doesn't win this race.
Yeah, I do think he is worth the price because he's the premier road course driver. And if he leads about half the race and wins, I mean, he can be optimal. The guy is fantastic. He's won 3 out of the 4 Roval races. I would be shocked today if he doesn't win. I don't usually say that for a NASCAR race because it's pretty wild every single week. But I would be very shocked if Chase Elliott doesn't win. The problem is he is worth it, but I think he's only worth it in like 30 to 40% of your lineups. He's not like a 70, 80% kind of guy.
Mo over in our Slack account says, last spot in cash, it's ugly. Let me just preface it. It's ugly.
Okay.
Hill or Davidson?
Oh, gosh. Davison. I'll go with Davison just because I feel like I can trust him just a little bit more, but it's close, but I'll go Davison.
Missionary question saying, what are your thoughts about Ross Chastain in GPP tournaments?
I can't play Ross Chastain. I know he's got an upgraded ride this year, but starting 9th, I just can't do it. I do not see a path for Chastain. If he hangs in the top 15, it's not the worst day in the world, but I think he gets outscored by guys like Alfredo, Suarez, and Dillon today.
Next up, our Stanley, best driver under 6,000.
Best driver under 6,000. I would just say Ty Dillon. I mean, we don't have many good value plays, and for the most part, I'm mainly focusing on Ty Dillon and Suarez, and I would side Dillon over Suarez.
Over under mentioning, he goes, on FanDuel, you can fit Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, and Joey Logano. Now, I know we talked about Kevin Harvick right before the show. You mentioned you just don't, not a lot of exposure there for you. Yeah,
I don't like Kevin Harvick much. Now, he's a very good road course driver. We know he's one of the best drivers in all of NASCAR. The guy was an absolute machine last year, but just in the small sample size we have at this specific road course, He has not been that great. He started on the pole last year. It did not go well for him. He got overtaken, I believe, by Denny Hamlin very, very early on. And then in the Busch Clash, he started spinning once again. Like, I feel like every time the camera cuts quick, it's Kevin Harvick in the grass just sitting there. I don't know what it is. He just doesn't have the greatest history here so far. And starting 5th, limited upside.
Corey, I appreciate you there in the super chat. He's got a DraftKings GPP question. Keselowski or Logano?
That's a tough one. I've been deciding on that myself. I personally have more Keselowski because I feel like they have very similar potential today, and Keselowski's starting a little bit further back. Now, Logano, he overall has the better finishes at the Rovals. He had a good finish at the Busch Clash, but Keselowski, these guys should both be in very similar spots at the end of the race, and Keselowski offers us a little bit more place differential upside, so I feel a little bit more comfortable with him.
In terms of their salaries there, DK, they're essentially similar, only a $200 difference, but however, on FanDuel, it's a $700 difference. For Logano, it's $700 more expensive, where on DraftKings, he's $200 less.
Yeah, but so Keselowski is cheaper on FanDuel. I would definitely side with that as well, just to get the extra salary.
Sam says, is it okay to have Davison as single entry, or should I move salary around to fit a different play?
I've been mainly telling people that in single entry formats like cash and just single entry GPP, I'm straying away from guys like Davison. I do like him, but the lowest I'm comfortable going is a guy like Ty Dillon in those kind of formats. Davison's fine in large field tournaments, but not in cash games, in my opinion.
Sometimes I use the analogy of when you get to that point where you have to go that low end, it's like, should I just clear the lineup out and just start all over?
I would agree with you.
Miami Mike goes over under of last before Jones wrecks.
Probably one, because he's my highest owned driver pretty much.
Super Matt, I appreciate you there in the super chat. He says, is Allmendinger worth 10,200? And thoughts on Christopher Bell? This is a DraftKings question.
It feels a little weird paying that much for a guy like AJ Allmendinger, especially for a guy that's not in a top tier ride, but I do think he's worth it. And is he my favorite play in the slate? No, but if he gets a top 10, we're going to be looking close to like 60, 70 DraftKings points, which is amazing. I mean, the place differential upside here at a race that only has 70 laps, it's definitely at a premium today. So I do think Allmendinger is worth it, but I don't like him more than a guy like Ryan Blaney or Truex today. But for the price, I do like it quite a bit. I definitely have a decent chunk of Allmendinger. Then as for Christopher Bell, like I mentioned earlier, he's in a very iffy spot here starting 12th. He's in a good ride. I feel like he can finish around 10th to 12th place, but that's not going to be good enough with all these place differential guys on this slate. So very, very small amounts of Christopher Bell.
Edwin asked about Justin Haley as a single entry GPP play. Doesn't say the platform.
Haley is a guy that I have like 1 to 3% ownership exposure to today, because he's starting so far up in 20th. Now, he was a fine road course racer last year in Xfinity Series. It's just starting 20th. Can we really name that he's going to finish above like that many guys today? I just can't see that happening. So I'm personally not a fan of Haley today. If he was starting further back, yes, but not really.
Bruce over in our premium Slack account was asking about thoughts on a favorite leverage play today.
So to get leverage, Kyle Larson's going to be very low. And I personally think he has a very sneaky, like slim chance of being able to dominate this race. But looking at ownership projections, I think he's coming in around 5 to 6% exposure. I don't mind being double that, or maybe even a little bit more than that, just in case he happens to get a top 3 finish, pick up some fast laps, maybe contend for a win today.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some drivers who we have at, the lower end in terms of ownership. And I know someone asked about this driver a little earlier. Cole Custer at $7,000 on DK.
Custer's a sneaky guy because, like I mentioned, that $7,000 range is absolutely loaded besides Christopher Bell and Cole Custer. Those are going to be the guys that people stray away from. I know it's only a 2-race sample size, but last year, Custer had the 4th best average green flag speed at the road courses. He had an average running position of 20.3, which isn't great, but it finished at 15.3 and 40.3 DraftKings points per race. Problem is he's starting so far up, but he's in good equipment, Stewart-Haas in the 41 car. So Custer's a guy that could, have a sneaky top 10 finish, but even then, I don't think that's going to be enough. So little exposure there, but nothing crazy.
David would like to know if you have any worries about Eric Jones driving in a backup car.
I do not. I mean, he's starting so far back. All he has to do is contend for a top 20 today, which he should be able to do.
Yeah. Chastain or Bubba Wallace?
Those are two guys I really don't like whatsoever today, but if I had to pick one, Bubba Wallace, I mean, he's in the new 23 car. I think he'll be okay today, but I don't like either, to be honest. But if I had to pick who would pick higher between the two. I would pick with Bubba Wallace and just start one spot further back. So I'll side Bubba there.
Of course, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Awesemo_com as we are trying to get to 30,000 followers, and we will be giving away 30 free weekly passes to our followers. So head over to Awesemo_com to right now and give us a follow. Also, be sure to follow the Awesemo NASCAR account, which is Awesemo NASCAR, so you get all the NASCAR coverage that we have over on the site, whether it's from Chris, the stuff that he provides here on the site, also Phil and everything else we have going on there. Of course, we do have a flash giveaway going on. All you got to do is go to the pinned tweet on the Awesemo Twitter handle, which is at Awesemo_com for details of how you can win an Awesemo Plus weekly pass there. Moving on to some other questions. Thoughts on Eric Almirola?
Eric Almirola, he's a guy I like. The problem is he's sandwiched right in between MDB and Eric Jones, who are arguably two of the best players in the entire slate. But I don't mind Almirola. I wouldn't say he's the best road course racer on the road, but at the Robles, he's had an average running position of 17.6, which is nearly 10 spots higher than where he's starting. So for a guy that should contend for a top 15, I feel like the ownership is going to be a bit lower than the guys he's sandwiched in between. So I don't mind him in tournaments. Don't think I'll get there in cash games, but I do like him in tournaments.
If you had to choose between Kurt Busch and Byron for upside/low ownership.
Well, just to say, those are two of my favorite tournament plays on the day. But if I had to pick between one, I will side with Byron because he is starting, 5 spots further back. So take the upside there.
Chris would like to know, he goes, with such higher starting grid spots, should you run cash game lineups in your GPP lineups as well?
So running your cash game lineups in your GPP lineup, I don't mind that because, a lot of my GPP lineups do have guys that would look like a cash game lineup. So I think that's fine. Now, if you want to get a bit different, I would start mixing in some guys that are starting near the front, but I do think it's fine to run, somewhat cash lineups in tournaments today because you can find leverage spots because there's so many place differential guys that some are going to be lower owned than the others.
Could Kurt Busch be a sneaky play today?
I do, because he's a very good Roval racer. I believe he's got a couple of top 5s, and I know he didn't have the greatest day in the Busch Clash, but Kurt Busch is one of the more consistent road course racers in the series. He has an average finish inside the top 10 the past 10 road course races, and I'm not seeing him get a ton of ownership today. And starting 17th, for a guy that has top 5 upside, I don't mind being overweight in the field there.
Reddick or Newman for the last spot in a GPP?
I've had that same question for myself when I'm building my single entry. I'm personally going with Reddick because I feel like there's a bit more upside there. Had a decent day in the Clash, and Newman's just such a boring play. I feel like we can get some fireworks with Reddick at least.
Jacob goes, and this may be a question that a lot of people have. Is it bad to be 100% on Alex Bowman?
I always say it's bad to lock anybody in NASCAR because it can look all sunshine and rainbows the entire day. And then on the last lap, Bowman blows a tire and finishes 30th. So I would never lock somebody. But if you want to be like 50, 60%, 70%, if you want to push it, I think that's fine. But I would never recommend locking someone in NASCAR.
Do you have any concerns about Allmendinger and the equipment he's in today?
I do not. I realize it's not a top tier ride, but starting all the way back in 34th, like if he was starting like 24th, 25th, that changes things a bit. But starting all the way back in 34th, if he just gets a top 15, maybe contend for a top 10 finish, maybe even more if things go really his way. I mean, he's going to absolutely crush on DraftKings now. And at road courses, it's more so driver skill than it is equipment. So it's not like we're at an intermediate track like Atlanta. So I think he'll be fine today, even though the equipment's a little bit off some of the top guys.
Dowens, I appreciate you there in a super chat. I missed it when it came in, but his was a DraftKings large field GPP. Byron and Haley or Larson and Alfredo?
I'm going to go with Larson. Was it Larson and Haley the second option?
No, Byron and Haley was the first option.
Okay.
The second option was Larson and Alfredo.
I just don't really want to play Haley today, so I'm going to go with the second option there just because Alfredo, he's starting in the 30s, so it's a little bit more of a floor there, and then I like the other option as well. So I'm going to start with the second one.
What about Brandon? Want to know if you can put Elliott and Truex in the same lineup? I know we briefly touched on both these guys a little while ago.
You can play them in the same lineup, but more than likely, you're probably going to have to dig down to those guys like Davison, which is fine. I probably have a few lineups like that in the 150 max, but it's definitely not like the majority of my lineups having both those guys because it does eat up a good chunk of salary. But those are arguably two of the best plays on the slate today, so I'm not against it.
Tyler, really good. And this is, because NASCAR, it's a little different about how much salary are you looking to spend today?
So last week we were talking how we were going to leave so much money on the table. This week, DraftKings did a very, very good job of pricing these drivers. All the good place differential guys are priced up. Like we're not getting Allmendinger at a discount. We're not getting Ryan Blaney at a discount. So for the most part, I'm using as much salary as I possibly can. Now I was looking at the 150 build in my cruncher. It looks like the least amount I'm using is around 48,000, like 200. So for the most part, I'm using a decent amount of my salary today.
Yeah, just let me look at what I have here.
Yeah, I'll check mine again.
Just to see the lowest in terms of it was 47,500. This is an 150.
Yeah, so we're in the same ballpark there.
Yeah, I mean a lot of it's in that 49 and 50 range. But yeah, last week I think it was like 38.7.
Yeah,
I would say was the lowest that was coming up for me. Jalen would like to know about Busher or Matty D for a last spot in his lineup. Doesn't say whether it's GPP or cash.
Well, price doesn't matter. I'll go with MDB, but on DraftKings, it's about $1,000 difference in pricing. But if pricing does not matter, I'll go with MDB. He's in nearly a Penske car. He should contend for a top 15 today. He does have a top 5 finish at a road course before. Yeah, I like Matty D a lot. I like both those guys, but again, pricing isn't an issue. Just give me MDB.
I'm not sure if I think this question we did mention earlier about get to it just in case about Allmendinger being worth that $10,200 price tag, and I guess and I'll kind of expand on that is what kind of points does he got to bring you to where you feel like it's worth the price?
So I think a lot of those guys starting up top can get close to that 60-point range, but we're looking at Allmendinger for where he's got to finish to get 60 points today. If he finishes in 9th, he can get you 60 points. For Chase Elliott to get 60 today, so if he gets first place, he gets 45 points. Now we got to add in the dominator points. So he's definitely got a tougher path to get to 60 because anything can happen. If he has an issue on pit road, he has a penalty, he's got to work his way back to the field. The floor is much lower there. So Allmendinger is definitely worth his price tag. I think I'd be very shocked if he doesn't get close to 50 points today.
Aaron over in our site count says Briscoe beat Allmendinger at the Indy Road Course last year in Xfinity. It isn't a stretch at all to think he could finish top 5 if we think Allmendinger can finish top 5, right?
I don't think that's a stretch. And actually, we haven't talked about Chase Briscoe yet, but Chase Briscoe is a very good road course racer. We saw it in the Xfinity Series. He's in very good equipment, too. He's in that 14 car, which is what Clint Boyer used to run. And Clint Boyer has a very good history at road courses. So Briscoe, the problem is he's in that price range where I don't love it because he's right around Kurt Busch, William Byron, Kyle Larson, MDB. I like those guys a little bit more. But I don't hate having a splash of Briscoe because he is starting 18th, and there is top 10 upside there and good equipment.
Can you play both Ty and Suarez in the same lineup in cash?
So in cash games, I'm kind of leaning towards at least only using one of those guys. But if you have to use two to fit in, I assume you have a double stud lineup like a Dinger Blaney or a Blaney Truex. I think that's fine as long as you're doing that.
Next up, MDB or Jones GPP?
I like Jones just a little bit more. He's starting 5 spots further back. I have very similar ownership on those guys, but if I had to pick one, I will go Jones.
Someone's asked about is Truex worth the $11,000 price tag?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he could very easily be the highest scoring driver today. He was so good in the Clash. Starting 19th, he could very easily win this race. If Chase Elliott doesn't win, I would imagine it's going to be Truex.
Favorite high-owned fade not named Elliott in GPPs?
I think you could maybe make a case for Allmendinger just because he does not have that top tier equipment. And again, he doesn't have anything to lose here. So if he's going to go checkers or wreckers, and he wrecks out, you'll definitely have leverage on the field because I'm assuming he's going to come in above 30% owned today. And we saw what happened last night in the Xfinity Series race. So I wouldn't hate it. Now, I'm not personally a fan of being super underweight there, but there's definitely a case to be made to have more exposure on guys like Elliott and Truex if people are afraid to play them because they're starting farther up than the rest of the guys.
A little news coming in here. I don't know if this really has much of effect on people's lineups, but Garrett Smithley, you can add him to the rear for unapproved adjustments. I'm guessing that really doesn't affect your thought process.
I don't think I have a Smithley lineup today, so.
Yeah, when I saw that come in there, did not see that being something of an issue. Alfredo or Stenhouse, last guy in?
That is a really tough question there because I think Stenhouse has much higher finishing position potential upside. So I will side with him in tournaments. If you're looking in cash games, not saying I'd really recommend Alfredo in cash games, but he's got that better floor built in. But I do think Stenhouse does have at least a decent shot of maybe finishing inside the top 15, something Alfredo I don't really think is going to happen today.
Of course, be sure to smash that thumbs up button here on YouTube. You like what you're hearing. Of course, if you have a question, you can leave that in Slack or also here on YouTube. And of course, be sure to be subscribed to Awesemo so you can get all of our shows. And of course, hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. Of course, I have one more show here today. That'll be NBA. Deeper dive and live before lock, get you ready for tonight's action. Michael would like to know, is 60% Blaney too much?
I don't think it is. I personally don't have that much, but I think he's going to come in close to 40% owned today in the big tournament. So if you want to take a stand on Blaney, which trust me, I have no problem with that. You guys know I love Ryan Blaney. I think that's fine.
Tyler says he already has Truex in a lineup, large field GPP, asking if he should add Chase or Blaney.
Since you have Truex, if you think Chase Elliott's going to win this race, or at least dominate the early portion, maybe Truex wins the race, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to pair Truex with Chase to lock up those early dominator points. Then, Chase and Truex could run 1-2 for the rest of the race. So I don't hate that strategy since you already have a place differential guy in Martin Truex.
Any love for Logano on FanDuel GPP?
I'm not a big fan of Logano today. Those guys in that range are just such iffy plays because you got Hamlin starting 4th. He's in that price range. Keselowski 15th, Logano 11th, Harvick 5th. I mean, these guys are obviously good drivers, some of the best drivers in the series. The thing is, I feel like they'll finish anywhere from 5th to 10th place, which their starting positions, the upside's really limited there. So I don't mind like a little bit of Logano because he has an average finish inside the top 8 at the Rovals, but is that really going to be enough today? I'm not sure it will be.
Kurt Busch or William Byron for a single entry GPP?
Love both, but William Byron's starting a little bit further back, which gives him the edge to me.
Someone mentioning Allmendinger has the highest multiplier on DraftKings. Yeah, I noticed. I was when I was putting together my sheet today, the super draft multipliers were just kind of really interesting. That some of them just kind of jumped out to me. I didn't look at the champion ones, but I was just like looking at just other ones. Like you mentioned about Chase Briscoe, he's got a 2 times multiplier over on Super Draft. There's some really interesting ones over there that I think people can really look at. Chris Buescher at 1.8 times starting towards at 30th. I think that's another one to potentially look over there if you are a Super Draft kind of player. Kozlowski or Larson on FanDuel?
I'm going to side with Keselowski there. I know I mentioned I really like Kyle Larson Day in tournaments. It's just if I'm going to pick between him or Keselowski, because the pricing difference on DraftKings is massive, but on FanDuel, if it's close, I would side with Keselowski just because he's starting in 15th compared to 8th.
Alfredo or Suarez?
I'm going to side with Suarez just because he has more experience in the Cup Series of these Roval races, and he's starting a little bit further back.
Here's a FanDuel GPP question. It is 2 choices: Blaney and Stenhouse, or Logano and Newman.
I'm going to go with Blaney and Stenhouse. I know Stenhouse is a pretty risky play for where he's starting, but Blaney's going to give me the edge there just because starting so far back, I honestly think he can win this race. That's what's going to give me the edge there.
Would you prefer Truex and MDB or Blaney and Kurt Busch in a single entry GPP?
I would go with the first option.
Another GPP scenario: Truex and Suarez or Larson and Bryan.
I would go with the first choice there, Truex.
Can I pick 2 10K drivers in my GPP lineup for DraftKings?
You can in tournaments and cash games. I personally like picking one of those guys and then moving down to a guy like Bowman just so we don't have to get, double dumpster diving for the 2 drivers at the end. Yeah. But I think in tournaments, that's fine.
I'm leaving 7,700 on the table. Is it optimal?
No, not today. The pricing is too sharp today to do that, I think.
I want to know how you did that.
I'd love to hear the lineup. I would.
To me, that becomes it's okay. Who's your highest price driver?
I'm trying to think. It might be like a guy like MDB, but I don't know. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see here. Okay, here. A lot of questions again about Ryan Newman.
He's like a really safe, boring play. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of upside, but the floor is very, very safe. And if you have like more of a contrarian lineup, throwing on Ryan Newman at the very end, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world just to kind of get more of a safety valve in your lineup.
GPP DraftKings question: Elliott and Custer or Kyle Busch and Reddick?
I like Kyle Busch and Reddick there because they're kind of iffy where they're starting, but there's plenty of upside there.
Of course, if you ever miss any of our strategy shows and shows that are non-live before lock related, you can get them as a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast to check out all the podcasts that we do have, so you can subscribe to the podcast that you're looking for, and make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review for your chance to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Good luck. Sam over in our Slack goes, it says K Bush, so
oh gosh.
and Kozlowski okay together.
Well, I'm not sure I like both K Bushes. I like Kurt more so than Kyle today, but they're fine together, either one.
Custer or Stenhouse?
I'm gonna go with Custer. I feel like he has at least some top 10 potential. Meanwhile, Stenhouse is probably gonna be capped around 15.
By the way, that question was for Kyle Busch.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Either one was fine.
Jacob says, he goes, I've got a lineup with 5,000 left on the table. Oof.
It's iffy.
Yeah. I mean, the question is going to be is kind of once we get through the slate.
Yeah.
As you look at the top lineups of, was there anyone that say even left, let's say 2,000 on the table?
Yeah. I mean, the pricing is just so sharp today. I have a hard time seeing that be viable today.
Truex and Newman or Kyle and Amarola. This is a FanDuel GPP.
I think the upside with Truex is massive today, so I'm going to go with the Truex side of that.
Of course, we got about 500 people in here. We are just about 13 minutes away before lock. Be sure to smash that like button. That really does help us out a ton in terms of helping us grow this show each and every week. If you're picking between Kyle and Kurt, who do you prefer?
So the pricing, it's a big difference there. Now, raw points, I would say Kyle over Kurt, but personally, when you factor in the pricing and everything, I think Kurt Busch is a better point per dollar option today.
Someone was asked about how much can Alex Bowman move up in terms of this race?
I mean, Alex Bowman at these robles has an average finish of 6.5. He legit has he has top 5 potential. I don't think that's super likely today, but I would be surprised if he doesn't finish inside the top 15, which is going to be perfect for DraftKings.
Ricky, and this is a FanDuel question. He says, should he leave 2,500 on the table with Matty D or pay up for Kozlowski, Logano, or Byron?
I would not mind going up to Byron there if you want to even out your salary, but Matty D starting all the way back in the 30s. I mean, that is really hard to pass up. But William Byron, I feel like his finishing position potential is a bit higher than MDB. So if you want to get a little bit more contrarian, I would side with Byron there to try to nail a top 5 guy.
Is 1,400 a lot left over?
Is this assuming on DraftKings? I think that's fine.
It has to be, yeah.
Like we were mentioning earlier, I think we were at like 1,500, 1,800 left max. So that's fine.
Bell or Reddick?
Reddick. Starting too far back for me not to like him.
Is there some drivers that we haven't, or even our watchers have not mentioned that you're just like, I think he's getting overlooked?
I think we've nailed just about everybody. The one person I don't think we've got asked about. Did we got asked about Austin Dillon yet?
No, we have not. No.
Well, I just want to mention I don't like him at all today. So that's my thoughts on him.
I mean, look, you look at, some of these popular plays. I mean, one of the more popular plays we are seeing is Ty Dillon. Obviously priced, under 6,000.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes for Ty Dillon today, but he does not have to come out here and get a top 20 for him to pay off. The the value options today are very limited, and there's a lot of good expensive guys today. So we have to go down to this range. And Ty Dillon, as long as he doesn't have a mechanical issue, he's going to finish inside the top 35 today, which he should contend for a top 30.
Is Ryan Preece a play on DraftKings?
I don't think he is. He's starting 6th. I mean, his road course numbers, he's got an average finish inside the top 20, but if he gets 20th place, he's losing 14 spots.
How many points do you think Buescher will end up with?
So my projections for Buescher, if I can pull them up really quick, I have him anywhere from that 35 to 40 point range, which is just fine for his price tag.
Michael would like to know, besides Hendrick, what team do you like the best?
In general, or just today? Probably just today.
I'm guessing today would be my guess.
Oh man, I would have to say the Gibbs cars, because we got Truex, we got Kyle Busch. I mean, yeah, I like the Gibbs cars today.
You mentioned about, I forget the driver it was earlier. You're like, I have 0% shares of that one. How many, like, are we talking about, do you got like 5 drivers that are in that same kind of window of like, or maybe like, I mean, I've got them like in one lineup.
I do have quite a few guys I have absolutely 0 to. I'm pulling up my exposures right now. So yeah, there's like about 5 or 6 drivers. I just absolutely have 0 of them. And so it's those guys that are kind of cheap, but they're starting inside the top 10 where I feel like they're just going to drop like a rock.
Mr. Portugal would like to know the top 3 drivers overall on DraftKings.
Just not regarding any point per dollar or anything. I would say the top 3 drivers today, which is exactly how it's priced. It's Truex, it's Elliott, it's Blaney.
Yeah, I was looking at some of my exposures that I had doing a crunch earlier today, and like just kind of looking at the bottom, like I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5. It came up with 29 drivers used in 150 lineups.
Yeah, I'm at 27, so we're pretty close there.
Yeah, and literally in terms of drivers only coming up in one lineup, Hoff, Bell, Austin Dillon, Larson, and Logano.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised on Logano only at 1%.
Yeah, I'm pretty low on Logano as well, just because of that starting spot.
Yeah, but I mean, look, you know who the popular plays are going to be today. Bowman, Matty D, Allmendinger. We've mentioned about Jones. We've mentioned about Chase Elliott. Those are going to be the popular plays today.
And they're really hard to pass up as well.
Yeah. MDB or Bowman on FanDuel?
I like Bowman. I feel like he's got better finishing position potential.
Yeah. I guess the question is at what point is too much Bowman?
I think once you start getting past 60, because there's a lot of good plays today, and I don't want to get like I don't want to be so deep in just a one driver, because there's a lot of guys that have very similar upside today. So I think maybe maxing that at 55 to 60 is probably a good place to be.
Paul was asking about 3 chalky plays. I think you can kind of figure out who, based on the conversation, the question we've had. Usually doing this show, I kind of know who the popular plays are going to be, but what's kind of your terms of who are you looking at as a chalky plays today?
I feel like the most chalky cash game plays today, and kind of go in different tiers here. I think Bowman, Chris Buescher, and then Matt DiBenedetto, Eric Jones. Those are going to be like your big chalky cash guys today.
Michael want to know, how can you justify Newman with his road course history?
It's not good, but you can only justify it because he's starting so far back. I don't think he's going to finish outside the top 30. He should be like a 20th, 25th kind of guy, which is not great, but it's not terrible either. He's more of a pivot off of Buescher, because you don't want 100% Buescher exposure. So, I mean, he's kind of guy he's okay.
James would like you to touch again on Justin Haley.
Justin Haley, he was not bad last year in the Xfinity Series at road courses. It's just starting 20th. What's the upside there? He's going to fall. If he finishes to the top 20, I would be pretty surprised. It's just, I would much rather play Ty Dillon. He's starting 18 spots further back than Justin Haley. Daniel Suarez, he's starting 15 spots further back, and I feel like they could finish above him. So,
Jamie had asked about Bubba Wallace, and this was a question me and Phil kind of talked about towards the end of yesterday's strategy show. Basically, like at starting 10th, like what is the path for him to being in a winning lineup?
See, the thing is, he's going to have to outscore those guys right below him, like Stenhouse, Alfredo, Suarez, and Dillon. It's not like a broken record with the Suarez and Dillon, but starting so far back, they're just like the main value guys. The thing about Bubba Wallace, his road course history, I realize he's in better equipment this year, but it's not good. He's got an average finish of 26.5, a running position of 23.3, a very poor drive rating of 54.2. So it's a very tough path for Bubba today.
Mad Dog mentioned, and this is a great question, of is having no Chase or Truex in a lineup a risky play?
No, I have several lineups without Chase or Truex. Like, they're phenomenal plays, arguably the two best plays today, but you got to get different somewhere. Like Ryan Blaney, Allmendinger, they could potentially outscore those guys. So, I mean, I wouldn't like full fade Chase or Truex today. I mean, if you're betting 150 lineups, you want exposure to them, but yeah, you're going to have some lineups without them for sure.
Is Busch a good GPP pivot to Bowman on FanDuel?
Are we talking Kurt?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a fine pivot. I mean, I like Kurt Busch. He has top 5 potential. He's a good road course racer. He's starting pretty much, half spot farther up than Alex Bowman, so it's definitely a bit riskier, but I like Kurt today.
Paul is asking, is leaving no salary on the table a problem in a GPP?
No, that's not a problem. I mean, the pricing is pretty tough today, so if you're using all your salary, I think that's fine. There's going to be multiple lineups that use all the salary today.
Balicki or Haley?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, we haven't talked about Balicki, have we?
I think there's probably a reason why we haven't.
I think so as well. You know what? I think I might side with Haley there, but both are pretty poor plays in my opinion today, but I guess I'll just roll the dice with Haley.
Is William Byron good for cash?
It's a fringe cash play. I like William Byron a ton today. He's one of my higher projected drivers. It's just starting 22nd. I'd rather get some higher floor guys, but I do like him a lot more in tournaments. Very fringe cash play.
Chances Bell outscores his teammates.
Well, he's going to have to outscore Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin. I think those chances are pretty low.
One of the comments coming from James, mentioning about Cody Ware, who's starting 21st, says, I know nothing about him.
Well, I don't think you're going to learn too much about him today anyway. I don't think he's going to have the greatest race in the world starting 21st. I don't even think I have any exposure to Cody Ware today. I might have maybe 1% just because it's what Cruncher gave me at the end, but it's nothing I would. Yeah, I don't think I have any Cody Ware today.
Dylan and Reddick, doesn't say which Dylan.
Yeah.
Or Davidson and MBD. Let's just say that's I'm guessing Ty Dillon, I'm guessing.
Probably Ty. So that was Ty, Dillon, and Reddick?
Yeah.
I would side with the Ty, Dillon, and Reddick there.
Milo goes, while on the subject of terrible drivers, Quinn Hoff.
Quinn Hoff? Oh gosh. I don't think I have any Quinn Hoff either. Starting 29th. If we're looking at his road courses, he's got an average running position of 33.7, average finish of 30.5. He could finish close to where he starts, but I think if you have to use Quinn Hoff, you should probably restart your lineup. One of those.
It cleared, just start over. Truex Jr. or Kyle Busch?
Truex.
3 safest drivers for cash.
The guys I just mentioned a little bit ago, Bowman, Eric Jones, Busch, or MDB, those kind of guys. They're starting so far back, and they should all contend for pretty strong finish today.
Got another Quinn question come in for you.
Oh gosh.
It's like if you're in that route, I mean, like you just gotta be sitting there going, okay, that means you have taken several high salary drivers.
Yes.
That to me, I think the thought process has got to be, okay, let me eliminate one of those and then try to get in that mid range.
Like, it's not the worst thing in the world to have like a 1 or 2 Quinn Hoff lineups. If you're doing 150 lineups, if you're betting like 1 to 3, there's just no chance I would have him.
Yeah. And Michael said, looking like a race without rain today. Yeah, actually, I was on weather.com right before we started the show. It's a cloudy day, but 5% chance of rain throughout the day. So you don't have to worry about that. And, you don't have to worry about, the race not really getting over till like 11 o'clock at night.
Thank goodness.
yeah, that is the one thing about, let's kind of wrap up on this one as what are you looking for today in terms of kind of as you look at future road races later on in the season?
So this year they've added quite a few more road races. So I think seeing the drivers that have a really good day today would be, pretty important to, what we plan on later on in the season. Cause I think we're at like 6 or 7 road courses this year. And last year we only had the 2 Roval races, the road course and the Charlotte one. So I think drivers are definitely going to have to try to have their best day today, figure out that setup for road courses, and we could use that later on in the season.
And of course, good luck to everyone in terms of your NASCAR lineups. Of course, don't forget later on today, we've got the NBA shows to get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. So that is going to do it for this edition of the NASCAR Live Before Lock Show. Good luck to everyone, and we will talk to you next week.